In spite of her faults, in spite of her frailty, in spite of her inconsistency. And his love was even beyond her ability to comprehend. But it also took spiritual strength to endure what Mary had to endure. 30 years, y'all, of venomous gossip being spread about her. This gossip did not end. Some of y'all may recall that even when Jesus had opened the eyes of the man who was born blind, and Jesus told those Pharisees that they were of their father, the devil. These men got mad and say, we were not like you. We were not born altogether in sin. What they were was trying to throw up his mother's, what they thought was promiscuity. And it took strength for her to endure that day after day. Can't you see it, y'all? Walking to the well to get water, only to have the other women roll their eyes at her. Going to get water only to be alienated and ostracized and to be whispered about and talked about. Yet they would say it loud enough for her to overhear it. It took strength for her to remain loving when they would snarl their nose up at her, look at her in a strange manner. I can see her when she was by herself day after day. Even after being isolated and avoided by others, I've got to tell you, it took strength, yet she gained some powerful lessons. My brothers and sisters, there are some lessons that we can learn even while we're going through some unpleasant situations. First of all, Mary learned what it felt like to have to walk the road without a friend. Somebody in the house ought to know what it is like to be friendless. You ought to know what it feels like not to be accepted, to be an outcast, to be pushed aside. I want to tell you, Mary understood what it felt like to be publicly humiliated, to have your name put on the signboard of life, to have folk whispering and gossiping about you. She learned what it felt like to be called out of her name, to be called a loose lady. But I got to tell you that in spite of all her ill treatment, she was committed to a constant walk with Christ. She didn't want anyone to ever have to go through what she went through. My brothers and sisters, when you're going through something, you ought not want nobody else to have to go through what you're going through. One of the reasons I preach is that I try to help folks avoid some of the pitfalls I've fallen into. One of the reasons that I'm transparent about my life, that I don't mind telling folks that I've gone down the wrong road, I've hung out with the wrong crowd, I've sipped from the wrong cup. I tell them because I'm trying and in hopes that they will avoid some of life's pitfalls. My brothers and sisters, in today's text, we find that there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, a Jewish wedding. Traditionally would last 7 days. Like Sister Billy Joe had already sung, what normally would happen was that once they were engaged, the man would go back to his father's house and he would build a room to bring his bride. He would labor, he would work on the room, he would develop it, but it was up to his father to say when the room was ready. The young man would get the room and he'd think it was all right, but the father would look in and say, no, you got a little more work to do. But when the father decided that it was all right, normally it was always a night wedding. There was a surprise. The father would tell the son, let's go get your bride. Father and the men, they would go And they would make a celebration on their way there. When they got there, they would claim their bride. And then there would be a feast for 7 days. All of the family and friends and individuals invited. They would drink, eat, and rejoice in the new union that had occurred. So in today's text, we find that Mary had been invited to the wedding.